Have you ever had people tell you, you need to listen to this wealth podcast, or you've got to check out this video on success, and all these different recommendations, but you're left wondering, how do I know these will actually help me level up? I've listened to so many podcasts and interviews and videos featuring successful people from all walks of life, totaling, in my life, hundreds of videos. But I've chosen these 15 videos that stood out to me to help you apply these entrepreneurs' tactics, and I'll show you how simple it is to apply their tactics in your life today. The first one is from Alex Hormozi's January 2024 interview on Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom podcast, and it's the principle about the lonely path. And he talks about how he was on his lonely path and he really wanted people to root for him, but he had to understand that he was too different from the friends that he had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people he needed to be friends with. And how you can take on a mindset that he had of, I will tell this story. This is what I'm going to tell. I didn't have these friends then, but now I do, and I'm going to tell this story one day. How you can frame that in your mind is that it's a hero's journey, and sometimes the hero, yourself, in your own story, has to go through a period where he's without those people by his side who he envisions will be there with him, cheering him on and going to those battles with him. So paint that picture in your mind as you're doing something. If you're doing a difficult task, or you're up late at night with no one to confide in or support you when you're going through a rough patch, think about, I will tell this story. The next one is a video from Gary Vee where he talks about how you're not anything. No one cares about you. We get caught up so much in caring about what others think of us and how we do certain things that we forget to realize we're not all that. What have we done to warrant such worrying about minute things, such small things, our surroundings or how we talk or our accent or things like that? Doesn't mean we should completely eliminate all care and all concern about how we do things and about our image and things like that, but we have to bring ourselves to a level of humility that understands that we're not big time yet, and you should be secure in yourself to understand that. For example, this blue wall back here is a pretty standard, pretty meh wall to record a video on with the background, but I'm fine with it because I know that my content is not at a level yet where I need to upgrade to a green screen or some professional studio or all that. I'm not big time yet. How you can apply this in your life is that to do nearly everything, if not everything, for first the Lord Jesus Christ, but after that, for yourself. Go to the gym for yourself. Put out those pieces of content for yourself and understand that you and your own benefit and your own satisfaction and your own standards are standards that won't waver as wildly as the opinions of those online or your acquaintances will. The third one is from Matthew McConaughey's appearance on the Modern Wisdom podcast, and it's about just doing it. You need to hold yourself to okay, consider it, have that time of mulling over or considering or pondering whether you're going to do something or not. But when it's time to go, he says, dive and finish it and find out and leave nothing to chance and understand that you put everything out there on the line the first time and the only time, and let there be no dipping a toe in and out and don't let that keep you up at night, because it's kept a person like him with all his accolades and success up at night. So how you can apply this in your life, I talk about this in a previous video of mine about how negative thinking might actually boost you towards positive results. Think about the negative of you not fully diving into something. What are you going to think? If you don't fully commit to all those reps and sets of a workout, what are you going to feel like afterwards? I just wish I did all those 24 reps or those 3 sets of 8 reps on that workout. And I cannot believe I didn't do that. Man, it would have felt so good if I did. Frame that in your mind and think, I don't want to get there. I don't want to stay up at night thinking about if I did not leave everything on the table, what would have happened if I instead did. Frame that in your mind and honestly be scared by the thought of not putting everything out there, and when it's time to go, just dive. The next one is from Tom Brady at his appearance at Patrick Bet-David's conference, and he was talking about culture drivers and how every culture needs those. He said, it can't just be you when you turn your back to focus on what you got to do. You need other people driving the culture too. And he spoke about that in the context of being on a team like the dynastic Patriots. When other people would come on the team, they would buy into the team first culture. The do your job slogan of the New England Patriots would rub off on almost every new acquisition of a free agent or player they signed. And if that didn't, then they typically didn't last long as a Patriot. And Tom Brady was like, I'd love to play against you. You need culture drivers, and how you can be that one in your own life, in your own family, or wherever it is I like to think of it as something I learned in school. Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? And are you reacting to the temperature change in the room and in the environment where you're at? Or are you setting that tone? Are you a tone setter? Are you a culture driver? Are you a temperature changer? That's done by influencing yourself in conversation and actually using your voice to move people in the positive direction, in a direction that's positive for the team, for the family, for the group. Are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? And see how you can be more of a thermostat in your life today. The next one is a principle from Jordan Welch about not despising the idea of having a job or having a job, but instead make it work for you and to your advantage. He talks about how he sees too many kids these days that are scared to get a job because they want to become a content creator or an entrepreneur, and he believes that's not right because you can do both. You can work a part-time job during the day and then stack your bread, and then at night or during the evening when you're not working, use that time to start a side hustle so you can build up a skill that you can get paid for. Skills pay the bills, he says. And he's right. And how you can apply this to your own life is to identify everywhere your money's coming in from, going out to, and what's left over. And if what's left over is enough where you can take some of that and invest in yourself and it's not going to require a drastic budget cut or lifestyle shift, you absolutely go for it. Get whatever financial calculators or budget guides that appeal to you out there and look at your money situation and start funneling whatever you have left over, some of it at least, towards some reputable courses or classes online to help get a skill that pays more than just the bills, but eventually levels you up to the lifestyle that you've always desired. The next one was an interview that the creator of the School of Hard Knocks, James, did on the Andy Zoltan YouTube channel, and it was about storytelling, about how people can fall in love with the art of what School of Hard Knocks does, getting successful people to drop game out randomly on the streets, but how you can take that further and make them fall in love with you, your style of questioning and whatnot. So as powerful as content formats can be, they can always be made in a way that keeps people coming back to you, not just for your what, but for you, yourself, and in this case, James in School of Hard Knocks. And there's always a uniqueness in everything, even as standout as finding rich people in expensive streets or high-end cities may be, there's always a level deeper that you can go. So the lesson here is that whenever you're putting yourself out there, understand that you are the brand and people subscribe to you as much as they subscribe to your messaging. Curate that with care and always be aware of how valuable that is. The next one was also from the School of Hard Knocks, but Patrick Bet-David was the one being interviewed, and the principle I got from this was needs analysis. And Pat talked about what's important to you is different from what's important to me. Ask a lot of questions. Don't jump to conclusions about what other people want without that. Thinking whatever I sold to him, I can sell to you. Don't think that. That's how you can be great at sales. Don't think that this is just a one-size-fits-all thing. Be obsessed with the other person and who they are as an individual, even more so than you're obsessed with getting your sale converted or getting that high-ticket offer of yours to get purchases. None of it works without the other person on the other end of that deal agreeing, so you might as well get to know them, right? It's also a good fundamental thing to keep in mind for any relationship or friendship that you have at any point in your life. People always love talking about themselves, so even minor things like repeating back to them key things that they said in conversation and making them feel heard can go a long way, both on a friendship level and a potential client level. So in everything, always do a needs analysis. The next one is from my favorite athlete of all time, Novak Djokovic, on his 60 Minutes interview in 2023, talking about how this thing that athletes preach about, how you should only be in a positive flow state all the time, or you should only think positive thoughts. It's impossible. You're a human being, and not only should you be aware of the reality that negative thoughts will come, but you should accept the negative thoughts that do come. The thing that separates the great from the absolute elite, though, and this goes for all walks of life, is how quickly they're able to shift from those negative thoughts to the present and present analysis. What am I doing here, and how can I not just get away from those negative thoughts, but even use them to my advantage to propel me forward towards the goals that I have? And that's even what I would recommend how you could apply this. Think about how you can not just move as quickly as possible from that phase of negative thinking to the present moment where you are now, but how can I use those negative thoughts that I'm experiencing to fuel me towards positive thinking? Do I use them in a way that's fearing the negative thoughts that I'm thinking of a negative outcome, so much so that I work towards that outcome that I want because I don't want that to happen, or whatever it may be? But just understand that you got to recenter yourself, and the quicker you're able to recenter yourself into the present moment, the better you'll be. This one is from Shaquille O'Neal's interview with Graham Bensinger in 2015, where he talks about how one of his major business regrets was when Starbucks contacted him about a potential business opportunity, but because Shaq is black and is from the hood, and he wasn't really sure that that would work because he thought that black people didn't drink coffee. Where he grew up in the South, it was sweet tea and things of that nature, not necessarily coffee. Howard Schultz and Starbucks moved right along, and then he started to see the growth and the popularization of Starbucks. It started to pop up in even those neighborhoods, and he also found out how his friend Magic Johnson also eventually got in on a Starbucks deal, whereas Shaq previously thought that, black people don't drink coffee, I don't know about this. So the lesson here is don't despise any opportunity right off the rip just because you're not as acquainted with it as possible. If there's a blue ocean that could be tapped into and the product that's trying to make waves in that blue ocean has a solid base, then maybe you should consider it. So don't despise something off the rip just because you may not be used to it, and learn from Shaq. This one is from Vusi Thembekwayo, a South African entrepreneur who talks about not looking to delegate what you haven't yet mastered. He talks about how in the world today of so much instant, we're constantly looking for the shortcut, even at the stage which we should actually stay exactly where we are and learn the things we need to learn. That task that needs to be performed in your space of leadership is sometimes not for you to delegate, but it's for you to master. Before you delegate, you master. Once you've mastered, you document. And when you document, you train. And that's how you delegate. How I've heard this being put in other ways is what you inspect, people respect. So how you can apply this is just be a master. Just work on mastery and work on outlining whatever process you have so much to a point where it's spittable and repeatable and formatable by anybody who's not you. Understand what phase of your life you're at, whether it's time to delegate or whether you just got to work a little bit more on mastering before delegating. This next one is from Codie Sanchez talking about complexity versus simplicity and how we think we have to be complex in order to win, but really we just have to work on the simpler things longer than we want. She says we make things more complex than they seem because it makes us seem needed. Isn't that so true? Sometimes when we're working on the simple things that may not be yielding results immediately, we think, man, this is just like, what am I doing? I keep working at this grindstone all the time. And of course, you have to understand the difference between beating your head in the sand repeatedly with no true results that are now or later on versus work that is working beneath. That's soon going to translate to the outer where everybody's going to see. But there's no need to overcomplicate some things just because you want to feel like you're working on something. If you've evaluated it, if you've analyzed what it's going to take and how long it's going to take, and if you already acquainted yourself with the amount of time it's going to take being a long time for results to start showing, don't complicate it for the sake of needing to be needed or feeling like, okay, now I'm doing something because it's all these moving parts and all these different things. No. If it's simple, just let it be simple. And that actually ties in beautifully with this next one, which is about Alex Hormozi and his lessons from Charlie Munger, the great businessman. And he talks about how too hard is something that he learned from Charlie and about a commitment to simplicity, just like the previous one. And a Warren Buffett quote that's relevant here is, I try to invest in businesses that are so wonderful, an idiot could run them. The path of least resistance is what you should prefer over unnecessarily complex things. Save your mental energy. And this may appear to conflict with ideas such as, well, if you had to mold a person and make them into the toughest individual possible, wouldn't you put them through the hardest things? Yes. But this is just about avoid being a cardiologist, someone who constantly has a propensity for the complex or for the complicated routes when other routes that not only lead to similar but sometimes better results, but also conserve mental energy for other things are widely available. Even for myself, I was under an impression about that I needed to do hard things or do unnecessarily hard things. I made up a New Year's resolution in December that I needed to post on all these different platforms in order to spike growth. I was going to start posting short form content on Instagram and then cross post it to Facebook, and I was going to learn, okay, here are the hooks and the scripts I need to make for this short form content, until I learned that, wait, that is so unnecessarily hard. There are people who've made it on only one platform. There are people who've made it only here on YouTube doing long form. There are people who have worked long enough to do short form content before branching out. Why do I need to make things hard on myself? And I hope that's a revelation that if you find yourself being a cardiologist in other areas of your life, that you come to realization that let me not have this propensity to do always hard things, that, you know what, too hard, I'm just going to leave it and prefer to do things the simple way. This one is from Myron Golden talking about where people get their values from, and it's a very core tenet of value creation, according to his formula. Past perceived voids create present perceived values. Present perceived virtues create present perceived values, and future perceived visions create present perceived values. And if you can appeal to those when you're selling, game over. The lesson here is to understand, as I said, where people get their values from and how you can draw those out of them. Like, oh man, I really wish I had friends back then to enjoy these things with. Well, there's something to appeal to. Something that's a past perceived void that was missing in their life. Present perceived virtue, man, I really enjoy golfing on weekends, or I really enjoy being able to do this, and that right now. Boom, there's something you can appeal to. Let's say if you're selling golf clubs, or future perceived visions, or things like, man, I really envision to take my wife and take my kids on all the vacations they want, to have just no constraints of time and to be as free as possible. There's a future perceived vision. I'm going to sell you this, that you can be able to experience this in the future and live the life that you hope to experience. So things like that, understanding past perceived voids, present perceived virtues, and future perceived visions is how people get their values. And if you can draw those out of them and appeal to those, you've won. Be sure to comment below which of these takeaways from any of these pieces of content stood out to you the most, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and share the video with someone for whom you think will be helpful. This one is from the football creator Deestroying on his interview with Colin and Samir, talking about brand deals and how to not take just the first one that's thrown right at you, and understand that the first opportunity may not be the best opportunity. He's talked about how in the early days especially, he had all these opportunities and his inbox was flooded with all these people, and if he partnered with a lot of the people who are just sending him offers to do brand deals and to include this in your videos and whatever, that he could get rich off of those right away. But the problem is, they're only asking for 15% or whatever it is. But the problem is, what if the audience is not benefited from it? What if you're not benefited from it and the brand walks away happy because, hey, they got their little commission? It reminds me of LeBron James interview actually with Uninterrupted, talking about his first offer was from Reebok. And actually, this will be the 15th and final one, that very interview. He talked about with Maverick Carter how Reebok was the very first brand to offer him, and straight up front, they offered him $10 million. As long as, though, he didn't listen to any offers from the other two big hitters, Nike and Adidas. $10 million right now up front. Somehow, even though LeBron grew up with little to no money, he had that wisdom from himself and people in his life to not take that deal and to value other people's voices. And I'd say it worked out pretty well, don't you think? So listening to from both 14 and 15, these final two videos, just listening to all different perspectives, but not rushing to jump in at the first sign of bait, because it very well could be bait. I mean, it could work out in your favor, but to listen to other people and to not sign yourself off to some exclusivity where at the very front, before you even listen to so many different offers and so many different voices, you've already closed yourself off to them. Don't fall into that trap, and be like those two men who did the right thing and who continue to do the right thing, and be very shrewd in all your dealings and brand deals and investments and things of that nature.